Howdy, everyone. I'm just letting a couple more people in here, but we'll get started in a moment. I just want to check with everybody that they can see the presentation on the screen there. So they can give me a thumbs up for that. That would be wonderful. Okay, thanks, Stephen. Oh, and thanks, Andy. Awesome, folks. So we'll get started and I'll keep adding people in as we go. So we're here tonight to talk about the new tackle height law trial that Rugby Alberta is implementing this spring as part of our leagues. We're taking the first steps in Canada and being the first ones to go forward with this law trial, with World Rugby recommending that everybody else follow after July 1st. So this law trial will be in effect right away for all rugby competitions at the community level in Alberta. And School Sport Alberta has kind of co-signed on with us to implement this in their leagues as well, so that we'll have the same rules across all the rugby that's being played in our community. So for those who don't know, my name's Andrew Shaw. I'm the manager of rugby operations for Rugby Alberta. Get to shepherd this forward right out of the bat here, which is a really exciting project, and I'm really excited to see where we can go with this in our community. So we've got some other presenters on tonight who will jump in through the call. We'll get started really quick here. Where are my... There we go. So our agenda tonight, we're going to start kind of with the why behind the law trial. We'll talk about what is the new law, go through kind of all the nuances with it, the different ways that it will be applied, go through some examples of what will be penalized, will be playing on. We have our friend Kevin Battle on from USA Rugby and the University of Illinois to help us understand on a more practical level how this law trial gets implemented in the community, since the US has implemented it on their side already. We'll go through some initiatives that we already have planned to help our community through the change. And then we want to have a little discussion with you all about how we can further enhance those supports and address specific challenges that you might foresee coming up. So I said we would start with the why, but I am just going to throw up the law change here. The key phrase in this is the base of the sternum, and we'll get into what that means a little bit later. But the tackle line of what was a legal tackle previously was the line of the shoulders. So anything with neck or head contact was a high tackle. With this law trial, it's now anything above the base of the sternum. So again, we'll go through the nuances of what this is. We'll go through what it looks like for the second piece with the ball carrier and their dip and how that factors into the equation. We'll go through that in a second, but as I said, we'll go back here to the why first and talk about that piece. So I do just want to flag here right now, we have Dr. Stephen West from the Sport Injury Research Prevention Center, or Prevention Research Center, sorry, on the call with us tonight. I'm going to go through some of the high-level research pieces here, some that's come from our global law trials, but Stephen's on the call here with us at the beginning to help us dig deeper into that. So if you have questions about what the research is, what the numbers mean, Stephen's here to help us a little bit with that as we go through. So the big why for this law trial, for this law change, is to change tackle behaviors, resulting in safer tackles and fewer injuries. That's the goal. That's why we're doing this. That's why this has been implemented around the world. So 11 countries around the world The four home unions, France, Italy, Argentina, South Africa, Australia, New Zealand, Japan, have all trialed this law variation at the community level in their own leagues. There's been a research project that has been attached to that with these specific countries to look at what the effects are, to get us some actual numbers and some actual research about what the effects are of these law trials and make sure that it's actually addressing that goal that we just talked about, changing behaviors, lowering the height, making it safer. So that project there analyzed almost 150,000 tackles from these 11 countries. When we say analyze, we're talking about a trained group of analysts with a common and shared understanding of what a high tackle is, what a bent tackle is, what a upright tackle is, what an upright ball carrier is, what a bent ball carrier is, with a shared understanding of all these things, looking at these 150,000 tackles, coding them, and then being able to look at the results. So when we talk about these projects, this research, analyzing these tackles, it's not just the coach from the game looking at the game film, deciding what it is, and then having thousands of different interpretations. It's one set of interpretations that a small group has been trained on to look at this. So depending on the union of these 11 countries that implemented it, depending on the union, they've also looked at some things around injury and concussion, and we'll get into a little bit about that here in a second. So this is kind of the research basis that's gone behind it to help support the conclusion. So with that set of data, here are some of the key results that we see. So again, our goal is change behavior resulting in safer tackles and fewer injuries. So when we look at tackle outcomes and behaviors, across this study, we've seen an 8 to 10% reduction in dangerous tackles, a 7% increase in bent at waist tackles. So that's having that tackler hinging at the hips, getting their upper body closer to parallel with the ground, and a 9% decrease in upright tackles where the tackler is standing upright, and there's a high risk of head-on-head collision there. So one important thing to really note in those outcomes is that the research and the analysis showed that there wasn't a change in tackle success rates, or at least not a meaningful change in tackle success rates between the tackles that were analyzed from before the law trial and the ones that were analyzed from during the law trial. Still have roughly equal completion percentages, which means that, did I go forward or back? There we go. Which means that we have a consistent shape of the game. So that was part of the research as well, is how is this changing the way that rugby is played? Because we don't want to necessarily introduce a law trial that changes how the game is played. We want to change the tackle behavior specifically. So within that research set, they analyzed that, again, the total number of tackles that was happening in a game was staying steady at roughly 180 to 185 tackles per game. That was similar across, so we're not getting a huge amount of difference there. There was a slightly higher rate of passing, which might suggest a little bit more offloading, but not I think that number was at 3 to 5%. More passes, which isn't very much across the game. But when we take that 180 to 185 tackles per game number, and we look at this 8 to 10% reduction in dangerous tackles, so that's 1 in 10 tackles, or 1 in 10 dangerous tackles we're getting rid of. It's not in our game anymore. So if we have 180 to 185 tackles in a game, if 20 of those are potentially dangerous, we're getting rid of at least 2 of them. That's the change in behavior that was seen across these global trials. And over the course of the season, that adds up a lot. When you play 10 games, 20 games, whatever your number is, that adds up a lot in terms of the number of dangerous situations that we're eliminating. So that's the first part, change of behavior. Make and kind of getting into that, make the game safer. The other piece of that is what are our injury and concussion rate numbers with that. So the way that this was analyzed across those 11 unions varies. So I've got some numbers up here from Ireland. Those were largely, I don't want to say self-report. They're reported, but it wasn't a research study that produced them. It was surveys and data from the community. Whereas for our France number here was a little bit more rigorous in the methodology that they used. And some of the unions that participated in the trial didn't notice quite as big of numbers as what I have up here on the screen. But they didn't see an increase in concussion either. So overall, we have a largely positive picture about how we are impacting on head injury rates, on how we are impacting on overall injury reduction in the tackle. So Stephen or Catherine, is there anything that you wanted to add on the kind of the research and the background here?
Thanks, Andrew. Good evening, everybody. And just in case you've just logged on, and in case you haven't met me before, as Andrew said, I'm one of the professors up at the University of Calgary in the Sport Injury Prevention Research Centre, which I know Rugby Alberta and has had a really good partnership over the last number of years. So thanks for asking me to be here this evening. And apologies, I can't stay for very long. I guess just what I would say in terms of summarizing everything that you've said is that when we look at, if we look at kind of 3 levels, of the different things that we would look at. The first thing is that the number of potentially dangerous situations or potentially dangerous tackle characteristics has gone down. So that's really positive. The thing that we always hear about is, well, we don't want to change the fabric of the sport. And I think the evidence that we've seen suggests that there hasn't been any fundamental change when in nations where they've implemented this. And then the final thing I would say is with the injury and concussion data, it's probably a little bit less conclusive than some of the tackle related behavior change, purely because there are fewer injuries that we can actually use to inform that the data essentially. So while some of these numbers look really promising, we are dealing with a very small sample of data, and I won't get into the scientific jargon here, but there is still essentially the message is that nothing is going up. It's either staying the same or it's reducing slightly, but not in a significant way. And so one of the things that I think as we move forward, we're learning new slight modifications, slight approaches, working with different partners to ensure that there's good adoption and making sure that everybody's comfortable with the law change. So as I say, the key message is the dangerous behaviors or the dangerous tackle characteristics are going down. The sport itself isn't changing, and then the injuries look as if they're trending in the positive direction as well. So overall, I would say very positive from what we've seen published.
Awesome, thanks, Stephen. Are there any questions specifically around the research and the global law trials that have happened? Not seeing anybody jump up. That's okay. We can always come back to that stuff too if you have one later in the chat. But we'll kind of swing back here now then into what the law change is. So we had highlighted the base of the sternum as our new line for the tackle. So we're now penalizing any tackle that is above the base of the sternum. when it's an open field play. We'll get into what that means in a second. Um, we are also penalizing when the ball carrier leads with the head in a dangerous fashion while running an open field play. Okay. So we can kind of see in the infographic, and again, we're gonna make this bigger. We're gonna dig into this more. We can kind of see really quickly on this infographic, where that nice green area is that will be legal. That yellow place where we're probably looking at a penalty, and then just as it was before, head and neck contact. Now using our head contact process. Um, so just to back this up a little bit, we talked about the base of the sternum, and I think it's important for us to all understand where that is. So I'm just going to tilt my camera down a little bit so we can all kind of do this together with our hands. If we find our pectoral muscles, we go in between them. There's a nice solid bone in there. You can tap on it and feel it. We are going to tap all the way down to the bottom of the bone, and eventually we're going to start hitting some more softer bits that aren't backed up by bone. When we've hit that soft bit, we're below the sternum. If we go back up to where we feel bone again, that's the base of our sternum. That's our line. It's probably roughly equal with the bottom of your pectoral muscles. Does everybody know how to find that? So, gives us a good picture on where that line is. So again, I said we were going to dig into our nuance here. I think that's some of the question that jumps to mind immediately. So we're going to go through a couple situations here where we would expect there to not be a penalty involved. So we talk about open field play. What we're talking about with open field play is away from a ruck or a maul. We're talking about having received a ball carrier, having received a pass, whether that's from the 9, the 10, the first receiver. They've received a pass, and now we're in open field. We're away from the pile of bodies that the ball emerged from. Right. So in open field, that's where we're really looking to apply our sternum line. So again, those are likely higher speed collisions, more power involved, and we can expect our ball carrier to be more upright in that scenario. The other situation where we're going to play on, we see in our graphic here, we've got this kind of sternum line drawn on as if that's where it would be if the ball carrier did not lower their height. So there's two situations that this can emerge in. It can emerge in that open field play like we just talked about. And in that situation, we're looking for a late dip. We're looking for lowering immediately before contact. But the other situation, and if there is that immediate contact, that last second drop in height, we're not holding the tackler to be responsible for that as long as they are in that good body position. We're not expecting them to be below the line of the sternum if the ball carrier has effectively taken that line away, or that target area away. So that leads me into that next scenario where we would apply that, which is that pick and drive around the ruck. So the player at the back of the ruck, ball's at their feet, they're picking it up. Their upper body is likely already more or less horizontal with the ground. And they may actually be driving their shoulders towards the ground, just in an attempt to just get an extra meter, just get the ball going forward, not necessarily trying to make 5 meters, 10 meters down the field, just get the ball forward, get their teammates over top, try to get that ball back out fast again. The pick and drive is a different situation to open play, and therefore there will be a different expectation about how we enforce this new law trial within that. And we'll talk about some of these things a little bit more as well. Another common scenario that we're going to see here is when there are two tacklers. We expect that both tacklers are tackling below the line of the sternum. So if you are coaching a low and high strategy, a choke tackle, to use Stephen's native language, the Irish were popular with that one. In this scenario, both tacklers need to be below the line of the sternum. If your lower tackler is at the line of the sternum, your higher one can't go up, right? So we're looking to play on in situations where both tacklers are below the line of the sternum. So how we factor in the head contact process is also a little nuance that I want to touch on a little bit. So again, I blew up this graphic a little bit more so we could see it. The head contact process, that piece that leads to the yellow and red cards, is only to be applied for head and neck contact still. So with this law trial, it's effectively created 3 zones. Your legal area for tackling below the base of the sternum. From the base of the sternum to the line of the shoulders is penalty only. And above the line of the shoulders, head and neck contact, you're following the head contact process to determine what the outcome is on that. So given that, what we don't expect to see with this new law trial is an increase in red or yellow cards. You should not have players receiving red or yellow cards. As a match official, you should not be giving red or yellow cards for someone hitting here, only if they're hitting neck or head. The one exception would be repeated infringements, but we're hoping with consistent and persistent application, those should go away really fast as well. So now let's get into some examples. This gets us into a little bit more fun. So here are a couple examples of some legal tackles under the new law trial. So we see in both cases, we've got a clear separation between the tackler's shoulder and the collar of the ball carrier. So as a match official, that's your picture that you're looking for. You're looking for that clear separation between them. In this first instance here on the left, the tackler is actually over the ball, which is kind of, from a coaching perspective, we're better off coaching this for tacklers to be under the ball, but this ball carrier is carrying the ball a little bit low, so we're okay. Whereas if we look at our photo on the right, again, we've got a nice bent tackler here, making contact in the middle of the body. Nice clear separation, but you could, from the angle of the ball carrier's arms here, they're under the ball. We should have a clear picture as match officials and as spectators for that matter, to see that this is, yes, a legal tackle and that we're happy to play on. So we also have examples of illegal tackles. So our one on the right, we'll start with that one. This would be looking to use the head contact process, even in the old law. We have shoulder to head, still legal now, just as it was before. On the left, doesn't look like we have head contact, but we clearly have the upper body of the tackler. They're clearly upright, upper body of the tackler making contact above the base of the sternum. This is what we would look for as a penalty, right? Because the risk here that we're trying to get out is the risk of a head-on-head contact, which is our statistically most likely to produce a head injury outcome. Any questions here on these four examples of legal and illegal? Kind of what factors we're looking at? Yeah, Todd.
With the upright body position, if you don't make contact and wrap and then pull them in, how is that to be interpreted?
So
you're not leaning
as
with the
in,
shoulder,
so
but you're
if you're
pulling them
chasing,
into.
so for an example, like if you're chasing a player down, you're reaching out with your hand, pulling them in, and your shoulder never makes contact with above the line of the sternum. Is that what you're asking? Or is that an example?
Well, it might if you're standing, and you pull the person in like in a hug. You're not making contact with the shoulder originally, but as you squeeze and as you wrap, you're at that above that. Your shoulder is going to make contact with their shoulder.
Yeah, so we would expect to penalize that. So I think you get at a good point with that question though, Todd, which is what we're looking at really is where the tackler's shoulder is making contact. That's the primary thing that we're looking for, not necessarily their hands.
So it doesn't matter if the shoulder is making contact if my shoulder is making contact with the person or the person's making contact with my shoulder. Either way, it's interpreted the same way.
So so like using this example here, just because I think it's really good to see pictures and look at this. So this ball carrier's shoulder, they might have done exactly what you said, like grabbed with hands first, pulled in, and then squeezed.
That's what I'm thinking on that.
Yeah, but they're making contact shoulder to shoulder here, and that then brings their heads into the same space. And that heads into the same space is really what we are like. That's the big no-no. So that's why this should be penalized in this instance, is because of where these heads collide, and the line of the sternum gives us a nice clear way to judge that, right? I think the thing that I want to use your question to springboard into a little bit as well is, so we have this supporting player on the defense here. They are still allowed to try to rip this ball out, provided, again, their shoulder is not making contact above the line of the sternum. Okay, so I've got another example that will maybe bring that out a little bit more. So we're going to play a little bit of a game now. The next few slides. Oh, Richard. Go ahead, Richard. Oh, Richard, I see you have your hand up.
Looks like he's still on mute.
Yeah, and I can't manually unmute him. I can mute him, I can't unmute him. Probably a good safety reason for that. If you still have your question, Richard, we can come back to. Richard, are you there? Okay, we'll move on here. So we're going to play a little game. Richard, if you still have your question, we'll come back to you in a minute. But I'm going to throw up some more examples of tackles. And I want you to tell me whether you think it's a penalty or play on. Use the chat to say penalty, play on. Use the all their reactions are positive. So if you think it's play on, throw up a positive reaction. Either way, but we're gonna play here and we're gonna see. There are right answers to this as we go through. So first one, play on or penalty? Lots of play on, lots of play on. I don't think I've seen any that aren't play on so far. Yeah, that's a play on. We've got, even though they're side on, even though the ball carrier is kind of bending a little bit, they're still below the line of sternum. They're still coming in below the ball. We're happy. Next one, play on or penalty? Angie, I think that's a good reaction for penalty. Yeah. Yeah. Great minds think alike. Play on because it's the All Blacks. Of course, Cam. Of course. So yeah, this is a penalty in this law trial. This is similar to the example that we just looked at, that Todd asked the question about. We've got above the line of the sternum, we've got heads in a similar spot, penalty. Penalty or play on? I see some penalties. I see some thumbs up, play ons. Penalty ball carrier, question mark. Tackler was never below the sternum. So this one is fairly contextual. This one might be one that we do have a little bit of a different opinion on because we don't see the lead up. We don't see what this ball carrier has done when they have lowered their upper body. Because in this situation, yeah, we've got leading with head. They've clearly brought that head down. They've taken away that target area for the tackler. To Jake's point, we could argue that maybe these tacklers have never shown an intention to get low themselves. But we also have a fairly non-dangerous situation, right? So, oh, perfect, Richard. That's you added your question, and this is a great time to talk about that. So we have, I think, as match officials, this is where that discretion does come in, right? And this is why I say this is without the lead up video for it to be able to see the sequence. We don't have to penalize the late ball carrier dip if we don't think that it's if it's dangerous. But Cam, maybe I'll let you jump in here because I think you might have a little bit of a better handle on it.
Yeah, well, thanks, Andrew. No, it's well explained so far. I guess just to add to what you're saying is the ball carrier penalty dip. It's something that's quite uncommon, and when you see it, you know it. It's a very unnatural movement to run and lead with your head. It stands out like a sore thumb on a rugby field. So it's 99.9% of the time you're going to any dip that you see from a ball carrier is going to be just prior to contact, and that's just a natural way that people carry the ball, and that's how you go into contact sometimes. But running and leading with the head and charging in a dangerous fashion looks dangerous, feels dangerous, and probably would have stood out to you even prior to this law change. You go, oh, what have I just seen? That just looked wrong. So it's a dangerous act in that sense. So it's one to be mindful of, but not to go chasing. And as Andrew says, just know the context and know what you're looking at there. If it looks wrong, feels wrong, it looks dangerous, is it a dangerous act? That's really what we're looking for.
Yeah. So even to go, I'm just going to go back here to our law. So 9.11, it's talking about things that are reckless or dangerous. In the category here, we've got leading with the elbow or forearm. We got jumping over a tackler. That's where, and then leading with the head now thrown into that bucket. So again, we're looking at effectively, has the ball carrier tried to use their head, as Cam said, a battering ram to get through? Or have they just braced and dipped to try to protect themselves? Those are two different pictures. We would expect the battering ram picture to be penalized. We would expect the brace for contact to not be penalized. Summer.
Thanks. So my question is maybe for later, so you can tell me that later. But as we're talking about this, all I can think about is these 13 and 14 and 15-year-old boys that I'm coaching and what they naturally do, whether we coach that or not, which obviously we're not. I'm wondering if you guys, to accompany that like handout, will be doing maybe some like sort of like what we're doing here, but like maybe a bit more for that younger age group of like, here's the things that you can't do, like maybe in a video format. I just love to be able to show not, us doing it to each other. Like, I think some context would be really helpful, but that's maybe an aside for another time. But
no, player-focused resource is definitely something that we can look at and take back. But yeah, definitely something also we can discuss more kind of in our last segment of the session here. But great idea, Summer. So let's keep playing here. Play on or penalty kick? Yeah, penalty kick. I think we're pretty consistent on that. So this is where I sequenced them specifically like this, because this is maybe more what we're looking at when we're looking at the ball carrier bracing for contact. I don't know, Sandy, are those two back players bound or not? But we might have the ball carrier bracing for contact a bit. The tacklers need to make a better choice about how they come into that tackle and get lower below the ball. The ball carrier is carrying it really high. There's plenty of room for them to get down below that ball. Penalty kick. Play on or PK? Yeah, play on. Play on. How many tacklers are there here, do we think? Yeah, 2. We've got number 3 here with the yellow-green cleats. And we've got this player on the right. Those are our 2 tacklers. This third player from the bluish purple team, they are attempting to strip the ball at this point. They haven't engaged with their shoulder. Yeah, they're upright, but we're only talking hands. We're happy to play. Last one here. What do we think's coming? And so we've got a diversity of opinion on this one. So what kind of situation would we call this? What do we think this is in terms of a rugby situation? Not open field, pick and go, pick and drive. Yeah. So this is our kind of exception with our law trial. With this scenario, we expect that this ball carrier is coming in almost parallel to the ground because they effectively have to have picked up the ball. We can see here they're actually angled down. Like you see that left shoulder of the ball carrier is actually angled down. So they're not really trying to gain a lot of meters. We've got a latch already. They're trying to set the next ruck and get that next ball coming quick, right? So how we proceed with this, though, is going to depend on where the contact actually is made. In this scenario, we're fine if they're shoulder to shoulder. It's above the line of the sternum, but the ball carrier hasn't given us anything else legal to hit than shoulder to shoulder. We still will penalize this tackler if they're making head or neck contact. So that remains the same, the head or neck contact piece. We don't know what that's going to be yet, but this pick and go, where there's nothing else to tackle except for something above the line, like in the front on, there's nothing safe to tackle above the line of the shoulders, or sorry, above the line of the sternum, or below the, below that legal spot below the line of the sternum is not in play. All that we have available to us to hit is that left shoulder. We're allowing them to hit that left shoulder as long as they are not hitting the head and neck at the same time. Clear as mud? Or are there any questions on this one? Is that your hand back up, Summer, or is that still up?
Yeah, sorry, I forgot to take it down, but I did put it back up. So
Okay.
is the tackler
Mhm.
responsible for the head and neck of both themselves and who they're tackling?
They always have been.
Yeah, it's been a while since I've been here. I'm just making sure.
Yeah, so that hasn't changed in all of this law trial. That hasn't changed.
No, that's fine. I'm thinking
yeah.
of language for myself.
Absolutely. And
Perfect.
it's good to clarify, especially when we say, oh, there's this exception for pick and goes, pick and drives. We want to be very clear about where the exception stops, and that's around the head and neck contact, right? As a referee, I'm also looking at this situationally, where, say, I think that's number 8 in the white and black with the lineup tape on. If they were the primary tackler, this other tackler wasn't there, and they were coming in from an angle, there's still plenty of body to hit below the line of the sternum from a side on in that situation. So as a match official, I'm probably looking at that a little bit contextually about, is this a front on tackle where the only legal spot to hit is really those shoulders? Or am I coming at it side on? Cam?
Yeah, no, it's just to add to that, you did right, Andrew. It's that context, and of course the video would obviously show that a little more. But it would be also a really useful exercise for referees in particular to revisit the head contact process just to make sure that they are, we're staying current with that. That, like you say, that hasn't changed, and just to know that, hey, how do I use that process? What am I ending up with? Those PKs or play-ons or cards.
Absolutely. I think it's a good thing you mentioned going back to the head contact process, because I think at the core of this whole law trial is reinforcing something within the head contact process, which is the tackler's power of choice. They are the ones that choose about how they make a tackle. Where we get this ball carrier late dip is that part where the ball carrier is doing something to take away the power of choice from the tackler. And that's what we're looking for. But so here in this pick and drive, they're not giving the tackler much choice about what's legal. But on a side-on tackle, I don't know how many of you watched England versus Wales in the first week of the Six Nations, the penalty try that was given for the Wales winger clotheslining Henry Pollock. Henry Pollock, 6 foot something, diving for the line. There was 6 foot of his body that could have been hit legally, and the tackler chose not to. So even though the ball carrier was getting low, it was a side-on tackle, plenty of body that could have been hit legally. That's why it was a penalty try. Still applies here now. Cool. Any more questions about some of these scenarios? That was my last slide for the game. But are there any other scenario-based questions that people have? Richard.
Hey, just kind of wanted to bring one thing in. Like, those are all completely understandable with match officials. What kind of process, or how do you guys want us to kind of run this with the U11 and the development? Because a lot of the coaches' discretion that are coaching and reffing on the field at the same time are different from club to club or coach to coach. So is there kind of like a hardline stance or a way that you guys want us to approach this at the U11 level as well?
So you're talking more kind of that game manager official rather than a referee match official. Is that kind of the direction you're going, Richard?
Yeah, because at the U11, we don't have actual match officials. It's coaches take turns each doing a half of the game. So a coach from my club will do one first half, a coach from the other one. And my opinion of what's safe and what's not could differ from the other coach on the thing. So kind of just like what's kind of like the discretionary and like how do you want us to approach those penalty wise?
Absolutely. So I'm just gonna fly back here to this one. So you're right that when you have two people having eyes on the game, you might have a different view. What we're hoping is that every coach is going out and getting themselves educated on this, because U11 is not the place where we want to be cutting corners around tackles. Not at all whatsoever. But I think everybody on here will understand that knowing exactly where every player's sternum is in the heat of play is going to be difficult. You can't go measure that. Even when you have a nice hooped jersey with a definitive line, it's not going to lie in the exact same spot for every single body type, every single person. So don't always have a kind of cheat code. But that's where we talked about a couple things earlier. We talked about above the ball versus below the ball. If we're below the ball, unless the ball carrier is carrying the ball above their head, if we're below the ball, we're probably okay. And any coach, referee, spectator should be able to see that definitively. We also want to see that picture of, let's go forward here. Again, this picture on the left, like we see a significant portion of chest between the tackler and the collar. Again, we can't be sitting here with a tape measure We can't do, sternum check on every single player. But if we're seeing pictures like this, we should be in a good spot. And then as that game manager type official, as that coach, you want to be coaching and leading the players to push that down. Right? So if you see them creeping up, analyze, push down. They will learn, they will get it. Again, U11 is not the spot where we want to be cutting a corner on this. If we can build those good habits in the players at that age, then U13, U15, U17, U19, senior are all going to be better off for it. Does that answer your question, Richard? Perfect. Awesome. Any more scenario-based questions? I think we're kind of getting a little bit into how to coach it a little bit, which is nice, because that brings us to our other guest on the call here, Kevin Battle. He's the Community Director of Training and Education for USA Rugby, as well as a coach at the University of Illinois. So they've had some experience with implementing this law trial in the United States. If you ask Kevin to come on a little bit and talk a little bit about the experience that they've had with implementing, and then give you the opportunity as those on the call here to ask Kevin questions about that implementation, what specific ways that he's changed his coaching practice, for instance, to work under this law trial. So Kevin, I'll turn it to you to maybe say a couple words to start, and then we'll turn it to the floor to ask questions.
Okay. Yeah. Thank you. I appreciate you guys having me on. Usually it's us getting tips and information that we're taking back across the border. So it feels good to have an opportunity to give some back. So, I've been coaching at the University of Illinois just this first year and was doing a lot of guest coaching last year when we first implemented this. And I will have to say, just overall, we haven't really noticed. I think the way the officials have been officiating, yes, there have been a few more penalties, but they've been pretty clear and obvious. There hasn't been a real, I think, and it's only anecdotally, I don't have any data to back it up. But I think for the most part, when penalties are called for high tackles, the players know that they're high. I would say that the only challenges that we've had in implementing this, well, first, let's start with whenever we're working with youth, high school, and even college, it's only at the upper levels of college that we actually find that players have the physical strength to actually affect tackles at a higher level that they actually are stopping defenders. So teaching the chop tackle has always been the first order of business, teaching players to get low. The challenges that we've had have been in the double team tackles, because typically when one player is going low, the second player, or at least we've always taught them to attack the ball. And in this situation, the player that's attacking the ball is almost always going to end up being in a higher, above the sternum. So that's effectively taken away that. The one thing that I would really question the data that's coming in is we've been challenged with both players going low. It's actually putting the tacklers at more risk because you have two players hitting on the left and right side of the body who tend to have head contact with each other. So there's a bit of friendly fire issue that's been creeping up more and more. And again, I don't have data, just only anecdotally, but that's something that we've noticed a couple times this year. We actually had a fractured cheekbone from friendly fire from two tacklers meeting on the other side of the ball carrier. But otherwise, I think we've had more of an effort towards chop tackles and getting the defender to the ground quicker. It's been really positive in that effect. And then when we do have the high tackles again, I think the players largely know it and the coaches know it. And I think the referees have done a good job of being able to use discretion to determine whether there was not just intent, but whether a tackle was more of a leaning in or grabbing versus actually hitting. So I think they penalize the hits. They're a little bit more lenient on grabbing and wrestling players to ground. So I guess I can open up from there if there are any questions.
Anybody got a burning one that they want to ask? Not seeing anyone jump to the top of the queue, so maybe I'll ask one, Kevin, to get us going if no one else has one. So, has there been any change that you found in terms of how you train the tackle, like within a training session, within a practice, to reflect the law trial?
Yes, yeah, and particularly around the double team. I think when it comes to single one-on-one tackles, there's not really been any change because I think that we've found that, again, players hitting at the sternum level, at the younger grades, college and below, that has never really been an effective tackle. I think when you're dealing with professional international players or even senior club players, yeah, they have the strength to overpower someone there. But individual tackles, no. There has not been much change at all. I think just in the double team tackles, that's where we've been challenged at.
Yeah, awesome. I see a question in the chat here. So was this law change received differently by players compared to officials?
I think that amongst players and coaches, there was a lot more hesitation and a lot more concern that more tackles are going to be deemed high tackles. And I think in some cases that's correct. It has taken away the double team tackle attacking the ball. But in the way it's played out, I think it's been a good thing. And like I said, no one's been surprised by any penalties that have been called.
Awesome. Summer?
Yeah, so I was just like, when we're talking about this, I feel like the open field tackle to me is pretty clear and the advantages are pretty clear. As a forward type person, I'm just wondering how you've been able to manage like those shorter hits, like within, let's say, the channel, right? Like those pick and drives, the maybe roll off the back, rather than it being a passed open field. I feel like there is quite a lot of uprightness, especially with the youth I'm coaching on both sides, and I guess how are you trying to mitigate that height in those circumstances?
Yeah, and I think with the pick and goes, they're largely not calling penalties. I think that those are excluding. Those are beyond. Those aren't being considered in the high tackle rule, unless, of course, there's a head-on-head contact. I think the head-on-head contacts at the pick and goes are almost always inadvertently, and if they're not, they're certainly obvious that they're not, or more likely they're obvious that they're not. So I think we haven't really had to make any real adjustments when it comes to the tight pick and go penalty or the tight pick and go tackles, and there's not an increase in those being deemed dangerous tackles. But I think we've had a couple of situations where you do have head-on-head contact, and the officials apply the law appropriately, and the players have to accept whatever sanction they get.
And what about folks that are doing, like, let's say, just like a wrap? Like, I have a couple bigger boys who love to just like wrap, like standing straight up, wrap the carrier and the ball towards them, so they're not close to each other, but the ball is stuck between them. Is that, and maybe someone else will answer this, is that if their shoulders aren't touching, where is that? I mean, besides not being the best choice, but
Yeah, and then I guess the question there becomes, are they really a tackler, or are they more competing and wrestling for the ball? And so that I'm not qualified really to answer, just, from a coach standpoint. It's certainly, it's just not very effective. But I don't know if that's considered a tackler in that situation.
Yeah, so maybe I'll just jump in before Richard. Again, we kind of talked about this earlier with, where the shoulder contact is. Right. So in that scenario, Summer, where we have that stand up where I've done that all the time. I've done that quite a few times myself. I'm gonna have to work on some hip flexibility before the season here. But with that scenario, we're looking at, okay, where's the shoulder making contact? Are we just wrestling for the ball with our arms, or are we actually making shoulder contact with the ball carrier? If we have that shoulder contact, if it's above the line of the sternum, then we're looking at that penalty situation. Because in that scenario that you're still talking about, even if one player is standing still, when the other one's coming in, we still have even if there's a ball between them, we still have the possibility with the way the forces work of that head-on-head ball carrier coming forward, hitting a wall, head still goes forward though, right? So Richard.
Hey, Kevin, just curious if you noticed if any of, say, your taller players had trouble adjusting or seemed to be getting penalized more, trying to make that contact into that lower zone with some of the shorter players out on the field, or other people contending them that they have to get a lot lower than they would have been used to before.
Yeah, I think so. I think we've always had a challenge with a few of the taller boys actually being able to get their body position low enough, because they're not only just having to bend at the knees, but also hinge at the waist as well. Particularly, we have a kid on the team who's 6'8" and a bit awkward. So I think he's always struggling to get down low. I don't know that that's any different than before, prior to the law change or adjustment. I think it's just a matter of athleticism and being able to get their body in a low position. Hitting below the sternum is athletes are going to have to make some effort and some work, particularly if they're taller, at getting there.
Thanks, Kevin. Any other questions for Kevin? I think that's really good. Tom, go ahead.
Yeah, and I fully support this. And I will say I'm 6'3", I'm 50 years old, and I can still get low enough to teach them to tackle well below the sternum, so no excuses. I'm just wondering though, does this impact mauls at all? If someone's going in to intentionally hold a player up, how's that going to be judged?
Well, I think in a maul, at that point, it's not a tackle, is it? So I think it's completely different in a maul, and I think the only issue we've had is when players are actually going over the shoulder. So that's a perfect example there in the blue. The players are still wrapping around the body. The third player coming in, she's contesting for the ball, not necessarily in the tackle. So, if she was behind her and reaching over the shoulders, then I think that there's an issue there, because you have the seatbelt issue. Would that be accurate?
Yeah, so I brought this photo back up here just as a really good example of what it would look like in Tom's scenario legally. So we have two tacklers tackling the ball carrier. They're both below the ball. They're below the line of the sternum. If this other green player were to join in and create a maul before it's brought to ground, we have a legal situation. They've used some upward force. They've made contact below the ball, below the line of the sternum. We're all happy, right? It's when we have, let's see if we have this scenario where we've got players coming in, as Kevin said, over the shoulder. If this resulted in a maul, we're not happy about that. Right? So does that kind of clarify a little bit, Tom?
Yeah, I think so. So it's just you've got to arrest momentum legally.
Yeah.
At that point, form them all.
Exactly. Any other questions for Kevin? Looking through, seeing if anybody's got any. Okay. Yeah, thanks, Kevin. I think if no one else has any questions for Kevin, I just want to say big thank you to Kevin for coming on. I think it's really valuable to get perspectives of people who have worked with this law trial already. So you don't just have to hear from me the whole time. So thanks a lot, Kevin, for coming on and supporting us in doing this. I was kind of starting to say there with Kevin's comments about not necessarily changing much about the way they coach the tackle, I think is a really prescient point for everyone to keep in mind going forward. If you've been keeping up with how to properly coach the tackle through kind of the core coach training, level 1, level 2, through tackle workshops that have been delivered in the community or with your club, you're on the right track. You know the proper technique to coach a safe tackle. That best practice coaching the tackle doesn't change because of this law change. If you're teaching that best practice, that's still legal. That's still the best option. That's still the best way to coach your players. So with that, the coaching supports that I've got listed here are trying to get you into those courses if you're not, if you haven't taken them. If you need to do a level 1 or a level 2 course, you will learn the right way to coach the tackle in that course. If you got tackle workshops in the community, I know there's one in Calgary here in 2 days that I believe you might still be able to sign up for. That's going to teach you the proper way to coach the tackle. If you're in the Edmonton area, for instance, reach out to the ERU. They will help you set up a tackle workshop for your community. If they're for your club, etc. If there's some more appetite in Calgary, we can always look at get some more sessions up as well for tackle workshops. Rugby Canada is working on an e-learning module. This will be for everyone, not just coaches, to help walk through the law trial, what is and is not play on with the new law trial. So that resource will be up as well. And we'll add it to our Rugby Alberta website. We'll add a link to it when it's ready as well. And then another cool additional opportunity that we've got coming up this year is our 2 sub-unions, the Edmonton Rugby Union and the Southern Alberta Rugby Union, have arranged some 2-day coach summits in conjunction with the rugby site. Edmonton's session is on April 18th and 19th. Calgary's is on April 25th, 26th. They will be doing some sessions within those summits around the tackle. And again, another way to get into the detail of how to coach the tackle and how to coach it safely. So lots of opportunities there for coaches to brush up on their technique. But again, if you've been learning how to coach the tackle safely over the last even 5 years, you are in a good spot for being able to coach within this law change. On the match official side, again, our core coach or our core training competencies are going to give us a lot of what we need as the educator team in the province has already done some learning of their own to be able to bring this knowledge into these courses for us, so that, again, as match officials, especially if you are a new match official coming on, you're getting the right training and the right support for this law trial. Our 2 sub-union match official societies and RMOA, they run regular development sessions. I know that they have flagged this as a topic that they might want to dig into more in those sessions and look at it specifically from that match official side, application, the pictures that are being looked for. So that's going to be coming up as well. And again, we'll get those added to our Rugby Alberta site. Again, Rugby Canada e-learning, again, same as with the coaches, that resource will become available shortly. And then another resource that Rugby Canada is helping us with for match officials is a quick reference pocket card that match officials can keep in their little book of cards to help them, continue to adapt to this game over game. Have a reference in their pocket that they can go back to and go through the scenarios and the nuances that we've discussed earlier. Any questions on those supports, those coach supports, those match official supports that we have kind of identified so far? I know Summer's idea for a player resource or how we can get that to players is awesome as well. But Terry, I think you got your mic off. Do you have a comment or question? Or your mic on, sorry.
Nope, just had it on. I didn't realize I had it on, sorry.
Oh, okay. I just, you popped to the top of my screen of people. And
as I should, Andrew. I should be at the top of your screen. I agree. But I don't have anything other than I think this is great. I'm glad that we're taking the lead on it for the nation, and it'd be excellent for our players.
Awesome. So I know we've got a little bit of a smaller group now. I was going to break us into some breakout rooms when we had 30 people on the call, just to have some, some closer chats. But we'll do this as a bigger group here. So from your perspective, I want to ask you, what challenges do you predict with implementing this law trial within your environments as either coaches or match officials or whatever perspective you're bringing to the conversation? Tom?
Yeah, I'll say the probably unpopular bit. There will be some of the clubs whose coaches won't have gone through this and will be somewhat ignorant about it. And it's going to be a bit of a challenge playing against them for the first couple of weeks, I would think.
Fair. Community-wide adoption, definitely a piece. So with that, what are some ideas that we can use to address that? Anything that kind of comes to mind to people kind of above and beyond hosting these sessions, above and beyond the coach supports that we've mentioned? Terry?
This time I unmiked for a reason. No, I was just thinking, like, for the junior ages and stuff in our spring sessions at the CRU, we'll do our coaches meeting. So perhaps we should, on those first few weeks, have those coaches meetings at all the age groups that are going to be in contact and making sure those coaches are having that updated information prior to games, and remind them to respect the referee's decisions.
Awesome. That's a great idea. Any other challenges that people can think of it for their environments? Kendra?
Yeah, I think just with some of the younger age grades, distinguishing between when they're allowed to be above the sternum because it was a pick off a rock, something like that. Like, I'm just going to ignore that whatsoever, and it's all has to be below the sternum. So not necessarily a bad thing, but I think that might overcomplicate things, especially if we end up doing a graded intro to contact at the start of the year already, and it's like, it's wrap, it's this, you can't fully tackle, and then there's different heights. It's easier if we just say everything has to be below the sternum. Like last year, we were like, you can't touch a leg in a ruck anymore. I don't want to get into where you can or where you can't. You just, no legs in rucks, the end. You either win it or you don't. But I think for older age grades and like seniors, absolutely they can distinguish, but with the younger, we won't.
fair. So that's kind of an internal practice that you'll use to help your players and put them in the best spot to succeed. Absolutely. Steph, I see you had your hand up. Sorry, I think you had yours up first, but then Kendra's like flashed in my face. So
It's okay. Kendra is just better than me. It's fine, Andrew. I'll accept this fully. No, it was just to kind of add to the referee resource, card wallet resource that we're creating. We're actually using that mainly to allow referees to educate in the community themselves. So when the referees get those challenges from coaches or parents or players, they can direct them to a resource to educate themselves to be on the right side of the tackle law. So just a little bit of an extra assist for the referees to make sure they're not kind of left on their own.
awesome. Any other challenges that we foresee? I think I think the research speaks for itself to a certain degree, but in terms of why we're doing this, but any other challenges that you foresee? I think to your comment there, Sandy, I think that's what Steph means, is that printing lots so that they get given out. We're not expecting the referee to go hunt them down necessarily. So Steph's giving the thumbs up. So yeah, that's the intention there for sure. Awesome. Yeah, handing them out like candy. Yeah. Awesome. So if there's no other challenge or discussion, I'll wrap it up here for us. Appreciate your time tonight. Oh, Steph.
Just one quick one. If anyone knows or has a contact for Summer, I just want to catch up with her with regards to that player resource that she mentions to see if we can support that from a Rugby Canada standpoint. So if anyone does have
her email right
sweet.
after.
Nice.
Yeah, I'll have it in the attendee list. So
sweet. Thank you, Andrew.
Perfect. Yeah. So, thank you all for coming out tonight. Thanks for kind of bearing with us through our technical difficulty here and wrong button pushing. So appreciate you all taking the time and the effort to come out and learn yourselves, and hope that from here on forward you can be champions in your own right with taking this law trial and pushing it out to the community. Because that, to Tom's comment, to his challenge, there's lots of coaches that are going to be a little bit in the dark that we need to bring up to speed. Lots of match officials that need to get the new process in their head, the new pictures in their head. So the more that you all can be champions in your own right, in your own spaces, and push the information out, that is going to be wonderful and help us out immensely. So after I get this video stitched up together, I'll put that up on our Tackle Height Law Trial webpage on the Rugby Alberta website. So that's just rugbyalberta.com, Tackle Height Law Trial with dashes in between. It's in our menu under coaches and teachers. And I'll just grab that. I'll grab the link here and throw it in the chat just so that everybody has it and they can bookmark it. So as more resources are developed, as more supports that you have all identified or developed, that's where we'll push them. As our match official societies get sessions set up, we'll push them into that space as well. So we have a one-stop shop for our resource there as well. Again, as with the recording of the meeting here tonight. So we do have another info session coming up next Tuesday, March 3rd. This time we're going to start a little bit later at 8 p.m. just in case there are people who 7 p.m. is not great for. I know lots of people with young kids. That 8 p.m. can be the difference between having no available time and having some available time. So tried to give a little bit different timeline there. So if there are people who missed out on tonight and want to get the info, please direct them to that web page that I just linked and to the registration link for the March 3rd session next Tuesday. And they can come on and they can learn as well. So yeah, thanks a lot for coming. And I'll let you all go here. Have a good night, everyone.
You too. Thanks.